Women don't fall in love because of what you buy us or how attentive you are. We fall in love with the man who gives us what we once lacked. I see thousands, and I mean thousands, of men trying to buy a woman's love by emptying their wallets, calling her all the time, or always being there for her, when this is the worst thing you can do, and deep down, you know it. You do all this to cover up how little you trust yourself, and that way you think that one day she'll fall into your arms. But don't worry, that's already happened in today's video. You're really going to understand how our minds work and why almost every woman you approach runs away. Today, your anguish with women is over, really. Stay until the end and pay close attention. Let's start with the foundation that most men completely miss: reciprocity and strategic giving. Now, this isn't about being a nice guy who does favors hoping she'll like you back. That's weakness disguised as kindness, and women see right through it. Strategic reciprocity is different. It's about giving in a way that creates psychological debt without ever making it obvious that's what you're doing. Here's how it works. You do something for her that's genuinely helpful, something that requires effort or thoughtfulness, but you do it casually, almost as if it's no big deal. Maybe she mentions she's stressed about a presentation at work, and 2 days later you send her an article that's actually useful for her topic. Not with some desperate message like, "I was thinking about you." Just a simple, "This made me think of what you mentioned, might be helpful." Then you disappear again. Why is this powerful? Because it triggers her brain's reciprocity mechanism. Humans are hardwired to want to return favors. But more importantly, you've shown that you actually listen to her, that you remember details about her life, and that you're capable of adding value without expecting anything in return. This plants a seed in her mind. She starts wondering about you. Most guys would have used that as an excuse to start a long conversation. You didn't. You gave value and vanished. Now she's thinking, who is this guy? Why isn't he trying harder? And just like that, you've occupied mental real estate in her mind. But here's the critical part. You can't do this constantly. Strategic giving means it's unexpected and intermittent. If you're always doing favors, you become a utility, not a mystery. The power is in the unpredictability. Now, let's talk about a technique that feels counterintuitive but works like magic. The absurd request followed by the reasonable one. This is based on a psychological principle called the door-in-the-face technique, and it's devastatingly effective when used correctly. Here's how you deploy it. You make a request that's clearly over the top, something she's almost certainly going to refuse. Maybe you're planning to meet up, and you say something like, "So, I'm thinking we should fly to Barcelona this weekend. You free?" She'll probably laugh and say that's crazy, she can't just drop everything. Perfect. That's exactly what you want. Now you come back with your real request. All right, fair enough. How about dinner on Thursday instead? There's this new place downtown I've been wanting to try. Suddenly, dinner on Thursday seems perfectly reasonable by comparison. She's way more likely to say yes because psychologically, she feels like she's already said no to you once, and there's a subconscious desire to balance that out with a yes. But there's another layer to this technique that's even more powerful. When you make that absurd request with complete confidence, as if it's a totally normal thing to suggest, you're communicating something crucial about your frame. You're showing her that you think big, that you're spontaneous, that you're not a predictable, boring guy who only suggests coffee dates. Even though she says no to Barcelona, her brain registers you as someone who lives on a different level than most men she meets. You've just separated yourself from 95% of the competition with one playful interaction. and she's starting to wonder what it would actually be like to be with a man who thinks like that. Here's where we get into the dark art of scarcity and why it's the most powerful attraction trigger that exists. Women are biologically programmed to want what's hard to get. Not impossible to get, that just creates frustration. But hard to get. There's a massive difference, and understanding this difference is what separates amateurs from masters. Scarcity means you have a life that doesn't revolve around her. It means you're not always available when she reaches out. It means other people, both men and women, value your time and attention. But here's what most men get catastrophically wrong. They try to fake scarcity by playing games, waiting 3 days to text back, pretending to be busy when they're actually sitting home alone. Women can smell fake scarcity from a mile away, and it destroys attraction instantly. Real scarcity comes from actually having options, priorities, and a life you're genuinely invested in. When you tell her you can't meet this weekend because you're going hiking with friends, it needs to be true. When you don't text back for 4 hours because you were deep in a project at work, that needs to be real. The energy is completely different. Fake scarcity reeks of manipulation and insecurity. Real scarcity radiates abundance and self-possession. And women become obsessed with men who have real scarcity because it triggers their competitive instinct. She starts thinking, if other people want his time and attention, there must be something special about him. I need to secure my position in his life before someone else does. This creates urgency in her mind. Suddenly, she's the one initiating more. She's the one suggesting plans. She's the one working to keep your attention. The power dynamic has shifted completely. But remember, you can't manufacture this through tricks. You have to actually build a life so fulfilling that her presence in it is a bonus, not the main event. When you achieve that, you won't even need to think about creating scarcity. It will happen naturally, and she'll feel it. Let's dive into mirroring and why it's one of the most subtle yet powerful techniques in your arsenal. Mirroring is about matching her body language, her speech patterns, even her energy level in a way that creates subconscious rapport. When done correctly, she'll feel an inexplicable connection to you without understanding why. Here's the key. This has to be subtle. If she crosses her legs and you immediately cross yours, if she touches her hair and you touch yours, you look like a creep who's consciously copying her. That's not mirroring. That's being weird. Real mirroring happens on a deeper level. If she's speaking in a calm, measured tone, you match that pace instead of overwhelming her with high energy. If she's animated and expressive, you bring your energy up to meet hers. If she leans in during conversation, you lean in slightly too. These micro adjustments create a dance where she unconsciously feels like you're on the same wavelength. But here's where it gets really interesting. Once you've established rapport through mirroring, you can start to lead instead of follow. If she's nervous and speaking quickly, you mirror that initially to meet her where she is. But then you gradually slow down your pace, lower your voice, create more pauses. And if you've built enough rapport, she'll unconsciously start following your lead, matching your calmer energy. Suddenly, you're not just connecting with her, you're influencing her emotional state. This is incredibly powerful because it positions you as someone who understands her on an intuitive level. She'll walk away from conversations with you feeling like you just get her in a way other people don't. And she won't even be able to articulate why. That sense of being understood, of being seen, creates an emotional dependency that can quickly turn into obsession. Now, we need to talk about the triangle technique and why eye contact is a weapon that most men waste. Eye contact isn't just about staring into her eyes as if you're trying to read her soul. That's intense, no doubt, but it can also be uncomfortable and weird if you don't know what you're doing. The triangle technique gives you a framework that creates intimacy without coming across as creepy. Here's how it works. When you talk to her, move your gaze in a subtle triangular pattern. Look at her left eye for a moment, then lower your gaze to her lips, and then move it to her right eye. Do this slowly and naturally, not as if you're following a list of steps. The movement should be almost imperceptible. Why is it so devastating? Because when you look at her lips, you are creating a subtext in her mind, beyond the normal. Her subconscious picks up on it immediately. It plants in her mind the idea of kissing, of physical intimacy, of what it would be like to be with you, but you do it so subtly that she can't call you out on it or feel uncomfortable. It's as if you're having a second conversation beneath the surface of the words being spoken. And here's the beauty of it. Once you've done this several times throughout your interaction, she begins to anticipate it. She becomes hyper-aware of when you look at her lips. Her body responds before her conscious mind does. These are autonomous responses that she cannot control. And all this happens because you know how to use eye contact as a tool, rather than just as a way of showing that you are paying attention. But remember, this only works if you know how to use it in moderation. If she seems uncomfortable or withdraws, you have gone too far. The art lies in reading her responses and adjusting in real time. Let me tie this all together with the ultimate technique that makes everything else more powerful: strategic mystery and calculated vulnerability. This is the advanced level that separates men who attract women from men who obsess women. Here's the framework. You want to be an open book on surface-level things, easy to talk to, willing to share stories and experiences. But on deeper psychological levels, you remain a mystery. She knows what you do, where you grew up, what your hobbies are. But she doesn't fully understand what drives you, what you're afraid of, what keeps you up at night. You reveal these deeper layers slowly, strategically, in moments of unexpected vulnerability that catch her off guard. Maybe you're having a great conversation, everything is light and fun, and then suddenly you say something real, something that shows there's depth beneath the surface. You know, most people think I have everything figured out, but honestly, sometimes I wonder if I'm just really good at pretending. Then you shift the conversation back before she can dig deeper. What have you just done? You've shown her that there are depths to you she hasn't accessed yet. You've created a mystery that her brain desperately wants to solve. Women are psychologically driven to understand the men they're attracted to. When you give her glimpses of complexity without giving her the full picture, her mind becomes obsessed with filling in the gaps. She starts analyzing everything you say, looking for clues, trying to figure you out. And the more she invests mental energy into understanding you, the deeper her obsession grows. But here's the critical balance. If you're all mystery and no vulnerability, you're just distant and unavailable. If you're all vulnerability and no mystery, you're boring and predictable. The magic is in the ratio. 90% of the time you're confident, fun, engaging. 10% of the time you crack the door open to something deeper, then close it again before she can walk through. This creates an addiction in her brain. She's constantly waiting for those moments when you let your guard down, when she gets to see the real you. And because those moments are rare and unpredictable, they become infinitely more valuable to her. Remember, obsession isn't created through grand gestures or constant attention. It's created through psychological patterns that hack into how the female brain processes attraction, value, and emotional connection. Use these techniques wisely, use them authentically, and you'll become the man she can't stop thinking about, no matter how hard she tries.